we're actually going to start this edition of Futbol Americas discussing the men's national team who are still looking for their new manager, and a huge name has been linked. Mauricio Pochettino. Now, this is coming from Paul Tenorio over at The Athletic, reporting that Pochettino is a, quote, top target of U.S. soccer. Tenorio also reporting that the federation has engaged in talks already with Pochettino's camp. Now, the 52-year-old Argentine last managed at Chelsea, who he left, of course, at the end of last season. Before that, he was at PSG, where he won a Ligue 1 title. Before that, he was at Spurs, who he took to the Champions League final in 2019. And before that, he was at Southampton, where, of course, he overlapped with U.S. Soccer sporting director Matt Crocker. All right, Herc, Mauricio Pochettino as a candidate for U.S. men's national team manager. Your thoughts?
Takes a lot of boxes. Takes a lot of boxes. Let's start with the obvious. Big European name. He's one of the best club managers out there? Sure. We'll get that into a second. Sure. Big name. So that's a box right there. Matt Crocker promised a big name. There is a big name. Another big box that he ticks is him working with young talent and developing said young talent. You could see his track record at Spurs. You could see the things that he was doing at Chelsea. You could see what he did at Southampton, where he did overlap with Matt Crocker when Matt Crocker was running the academy out there. So there's a familiarity with the U.S. camp and the way of doing things. Another box is, listen, if you can deal with the egos of the likes of Neymar, Kylian Mbappe, Lionel Messi, then certainly you can deal with the egos of the Tyler Adams, Christian Pulisic, Timothy Weah, Giovanni Reynas of the world. Takes a lot of boxes. Here's my issue, is I'm not a romantic at heart when it comes to my football. I am a pragmatic at heart.
You want some trophies?
I want some trophies. And he is of the Marcelo Bielsa vein. He was of that coaching tree. He's of those values, and that is showcasing talent. How much of that talent he will have to showcase here is up for debate. But certainly when you look at the stops, when you look at the talent that he's had, to only come away with one piece of silverware and it be at the place where everybody, Sebi, I could put you at PSG and you coach them to a Ligue 1 title. Yes, I firmly believe that, because that's what you're supposed to do if you're PSG. It's what you're supposed to do if you have a team with a Neymar, with an Mbappe, with a Messi. You're supposed to at least win that trophy. That's what he's got to show for it. So I am very reserved when it comes to these romantic coaches, but certainly, this ticks a lot of boxes.
Yeah, to me, this is the best candidate by far, right? If we go back to the beginning and we remember Jurgen Klopp, that was kind of a pie in the sky. Since then, there was also the Luis de la Fuente rumor that popped up. But after those two names hit, and those two names hit pretty early, the candidates we've been talking about, Herc, we've been coming pretty far back down to earth, right? They're guys with very serious either limitations in their managerial resume, or they're guys who are connected to the American game, right, that are very accessible. This is very different. Let's start with the profile of the candidate. Here in the media, we know you need buzz. Now, this guy's not Klopp, maybe he's not quite late night circuit, but he's a massive, massive name. So I think right there off the bat, it would be a huge coup for U.S. soccer. The other thing here that's worth stating, and I know he got a pretty big payoff off both the PSG and the Chelsea firings, which actually might make him accessible. It's why it's a good place to be shopping. This isn't going to be cheap, right? This guy is managed at some of the biggest clubs in the world. He's accustomed, Herc, to a pretty big salary. So for me, if U.S. soccer is going out there and they're willing to spend, I don't know, maybe $10 million is what it would take to bring this guy in, that's pretty ambitious, and it's way more than what they've been spending in the past. Remember, Greg Berhalter was on 2.2. As far as what I like about his candidacy, Herc, it's two things specific. I actually like the thing that you don't like, which is the attractive soccer side of this, because one of the biggest criticisms of the last manager was it wasn't attractive enough. Remember, Greg Berhalter's a guy who got fired from his second division job in Sweden because his team wasn't attacking enough, because they weren't offensive enough. This guy doesn't have that on his resume, right? He's got some other flaws that you talk about, maybe lack of trophies, maybe lack of defensive responsibility at times, certainly towards the end there with Spurs. But if we're just talking about attractive football and getting some really good-looking soccer out of this so-called golden generation, I love it. The other thing I love here, Herc, is he's got a track record of making teams better, and that's what this U.S. team needs. If you look at his last 4 full seasons at Spurs, they were top 4 every single year. In the 5 years since, 1 top 4 finish In the 2 years before he got there, 0 top 4 finishes. That tells me exactly what he's capable of, and that is exactly what this U.S. team needs. They need to be taken from the level they're at to another level, and he's the guy to do that. The other thing I'll mention, Herc, and I know he speaks perfectly fine English, but he's Latino, and we talk about hype and big names and getting people excited. Mauricio Pochettino would get a lot of people excited. A lot of Latinos in this country would take note. And we know U.S. soccer, and we've criticized them for it on this show, has not always been great or successful in engaging the Latino audience in this country. You bring a Mauricio Pochettino in, and I guarantee you people are going to start paying attention.
They'll pay attention for sure. Let me just really quickly counter a few things you said. Really quickly, you talk about all the experience he has. What about the experience he doesn't have? He's never coached a national team, and you harp on how important that is heading into a World Cup, is that national team experience, because you can talk about how good he is at developing a team identity in a club situation when you have day in, day out, and you can work with these players. That's not the same setting with the national team. And you mentioned what he did at Spurs. Fine. Find a generational talent like Harry Kane. Fine. Find another generational talent like Son. Fine. Find a goalkeeper, World Cup winning goalkeeper like Hugo Lloris. Fine, do that, and I'm on board. But when we look at the talent that you have here, can he do it without the big names? Because the last 3 stops filled with big names. Top-level talent. You can go out and get better talent if you have the money. And he did have the money at those spots. You're not going to have that here. You're going to have to do with what you got. That's a worry for me.
I'm glad you brought up the point about the international experience, because I did bring it up with Pellegrino Matarazzo as a chief concern. It's obviously a concern when you look at his resume, right? If I think it's important for one manager, I think it's important for the other. My response would be the resumes are drastically different. So the fact that one guy is lacking international experience on a thinner, kind of less successful resume, and Pellegrino Matarazzo, as good as it is, compared to Pochettino, I'm willing to sacrifice the international experience for the quality coach that I think you would be getting. What's interesting about Pochettino's situation is, while he is unattached, Herc, it's not like there's not a lot of interest in this guy from beyond the United States. He's also been linked to the England job. How do you think those two managerial positions compare in his mind?
I don't think they compare. If he honestly has the opportunity to coach England, and I'm going to coach one of the two, the U.S. men's national team or the English national team, he's going to go with the English national team. It's the clearest path to fighting for a trophy. Insert joke in there, if you will, if you want, I should say. But that's a reality. He's got more of a chance of winning a trophy with England. And it's a high-profile team. It's a high-profile job. You're going to be, and he seems to like English football. He keeps going back to that. Well, it's what he's known for. It's where he succeeded. So it seems like the logical step that a national team coach or a coach that any top club sacks a manager is the number one candidate or one of the top candidates for said club, not only in England, but around the world, you would think would be a natural fit for the English national team. I don't think it's much of a debate. But I'll tell you what, if you look at what you can potentially do, the ceiling for both, and what that could mean for you and the pressure that comes with it, it's night and day. If he does choose the U.S. men's national team, he's not going to be hounded by the press as if he chose the English national team. If you go to the World Cup and do well, it just increases your value. If you don't do well, so what? It's the United States men's national team. Nothing's going to happen. It's not going to tarnish your legacy if things don't go well in these next 2 years. It's just a different animal. If you do go with the English national team and things don't go well, that could be the end of your club coaching career as well. So, you know.
I like it, man. I think there are some arguments to be made for the U.S. job. I think if we're going off talent pool, it's obviously England. If we're talking about winning something big, it's obviously England as well. But if you're talking about meeting expectations, Herc, and potentially doing something that transcends expectations, that leaves a legacy, and Pochettino, to your point, you say he's a romantic. I might think, he's thinking about a legacy, and he's thinking, where might I have more of a legacy? A home World Cup, which to me is a very attractive part of this opportunity for the next U.S. coach. You got a home World Cup where the expectations are not to win. It's maybe a quarterfinal, or something amazing would be a semifinal. If Pochettino thinks that he can do that, then suddenly the U.S. job becomes very, very attractive because there is less pressure. And I got to think, Herc, if you're in Pochettino's shoes right now, and we know that at least his camp is talking with U.S. soccer, if you're entertaining this idea, it's because you want something different, right? It's because if you're thinking about leaving the intense furnace that is European soccer to come take an international job, which you've never held before, in the United States, it's because you do want less pressure. It's because you do want something different. And in that regard, if we assume that that's how he thinks, I think it's a pretty obvious choice the other way. The U.S. job is much more attractive to somebody who's thinking that way than the English job.
I don't disagree with that. I guess it's up to him and what he wants out of his next not only 2, but probably even longer. Let's say 6 years.
Mm-hmm. All right, so Pochettino, the biggest name right now. The hottest name last week, or maybe earlier this week when we were talking to Derek Ray about it, was, of course, Pellegrino Matarazzo, who's been on this show a bunch. Matarazzo threw some cold water on all that discussion after he had been linked to the U.S. job. In fact, multiple papers over in Germany reporting that he'd been offered the job. Here's what he had to say about his future at Hoffenheim. Quote, "It is enormously important to create clarity and calm at this unsettling time. I'm proud to be the coach of this team, and I'm really looking forward to taking part in European competition with the boys this season. I'm convinced that with the right additions to the squad, we'll have another successful season." Herc, you kind of called this. What do you make of Matarazzo turning down the U.S. job, if we do indeed believe that he was offered the gig?
I don't think he's turning down the U.S. men's national team job. You said it yourself. If we were to believe he was offered the job, I think these are optics. I said it, last show. This, to me, after doing a worldwide search last go-around, but we couldn't come up with the names and nobody stepped forward. Yes, I was interviewed besides Jesse Marsh, and we know how that ended up going. They're doing their due diligence this go-around and picking up the phone and having a conversation. I think that's what happened here. I'm a big fan of Pellegrino Matarazzo and what he's done at Hoffenheim. They're back in Europa League, 7th place, and Bundesliga doing so well this year. Got an extra, European spot. Fully deserved for Pellegrino. I hope he continues it. But I don't think he was never a natural candidate for this job.
Yeah, I know you believe that. I mean, it's hard to disagree with you because even when he told us that they talked to him, it sounded like it was a very light conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe they were almost in that instance also doing their due diligence. And the timing here is terrible, right? You're literally right before the season. He has achieved a lot. Getting Hoffenheim into European football based on where they were is a big accomplishment. And I could see from a managerial perspective why you would want to see that project through. However, Herc, given what we just said about Pochettino and how he could be enticed by the fact that he's maybe going to get to coach a country that has a home World Cup. Well, if you are an American and you have the chance to coach your country in a home World Cup, I would think that would be very, very interesting, especially based on what Matarazzo has said, not just to us, but in other interviews with Archie Rintot about supporting soccer and the growth of the game in this country. I have to say, if he was offered the job, I am shocked that he's staying at Hoffenheim. I have to say I'm surprised that he wouldn't take it because even though he's been kind of a distant figure from U.S. soccer circles, it would, to me, seem to be like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for this manager. And I will say this, because we both have a lot of respect for Pellegrino Matarazzo, not just for what he's done, but for his appearances on the show. He's always very candid. I would worry for him a little bit here, Herc. And I wonder if he shares this concern. What if, how club football is, what if Hoffenheim gets off to a bad start, has a couple bad months? In Germany, the fans have a huge say, and I hope they remember that in this moment of kind of instability for the club, he stepped up, and I hope whoever else comes in that front office remembers that he kept this job when the U.S. was knocking on his door, because I would hate to see her come October, November, it's somebody else in charge of the national team. It could have been Pellegrino Matarazzo, and he's out of a job because of the ruthless nature of coaching in Germany.
What are you, his agent here, advocating for Pellegrino Matarazzo to save his job before the season's even started? What's going on here, Seb? Like, I don't think he was offered the job.
You know how it is.
I don't think he was offered the job.
They're talking to him about it. They're talking to him about it. That's got to be interesting enough.
All right.
You don't think that's attractive? You don't think it's attractive to a guy?
Absolutely. Absolutely, which is why I don't buy that he turned it down. I don't think he was offered the job. I think it was they picked up the phone, had a conversation. Thanks for coming.